Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today, we are super excited to have Jen Hardy with us. Jen is the COO at the Academy of MotiveAction. I'll get that right. I'm going to struggle with something here today, right? But Jen amazingly has had a transformation-driven experience. She was an educator. She was a speaker. She's a coach. And she bridges logic and emotion to create lasting impact, which is a mouthful. But we're super excited to have Jen with us, and I can't wait to learn from Jen kind of some of these pieces that came from being an educator and moving that into the real world, I'll say, and leadership. Jen, welcome, and tell us a little bit about how did you end up going through this journey and end up where you are today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. In terms of how I got to where I am today, gosh, there's a lot of twists and turns, but to keep it to a certain point here on the podcast, I was a teacher and a coach for 12 years. I was a state championship soccer coach, girls athletic coordinator. I taught communications and health to freshmen. And I enjoyed my job. It was a lot at the same time, as if anybody who knows anything about public education. And I got to a point where it was too much, where it was overwhelming and exhausting, and I was sleeping in my car for anywhere from 2 to 3 hours during my planning period and or lunch just to survive a day. And that was kind of the first indication of something's not quite right, what's going on, what's wrong. First indications of, for me, like apparently I'm the type of person that has to learn the hard way. So I had to get punched in the face of like passing out for 3 hours during the day to realize I might be burning out. And then looking for support at that point and shifting some things and changing some things. You know, a lot of people at that point could have given up and walked away. And I didn't. I did find other resources. Landmark was one of the first self-development courses that I had jumped into about a year after that awareness started happening and realizing what was going on with me. Because like most people, I jumped into books first. But then I found a course, found the program, got in the program, and had some more realizations around I was doing what I wound up doing. And while I was really good at what I wound up doing, and I had kind of reinvigorated some of the passion behind what I was doing, it definitely gave me a curiosity of what else can I do? And so I decided to leave my career at the height of my career and go find out what else I wanted to do. Who else am I? What do I want to be when I grow up, right? And I got out, I left in 2018. And I discovered neurolinguistic programming, NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, behavioral sciences, more communication stuff. I mean, I feel like I've just been in this whirlwind of not just self-development and growth and like peeling apart the layers of myself, but then learning all of those things. Because once it had the impact on me, I was like, okay, how do I learn this to support others with this? It wasn't what I went in there to do it for. It just came out on the other end. So like I say, the irony of the whole situation is that I left teaching and coaching only to find out that I am a teacher and a coach. I'm just not one for public education.
So I'm curious. I mean, you've shared that kind of that turning point for you when you're sleeping in your car, you're burned out. What do you think is really the driver that got you to, rather than close down or, you know, stay in the role that you were in and be miserable and continue to be burned out and probably become a bad teacher instead of a great teacher? What drove you to say, no, I need to do something different? Because when I think about people, leadership, business, school, any path that I can think of, there is a definite difference between the people that overcome a challenge and succeed as opposed to the people that just stay in it and say, no, I'm a teacher and I have a pension, and that's what I'm working for. I'm working for the pension. So they convince themselves. One of my guests several episodes ago called it rationalizing, where you tell yourself rational lies, which I thought was really good. But what do you think drove you to be different and to overcome it?
I think the way I want to answer that is practicing courage and recognizing, because I took that landmark course about a year after the burnout was really prevalent and really obvious, right? And I started peeling back belief systems, constructs, biases, layers, and realizing, like the one I said, right? I'm doing what I wound up doing. And what I mean by that is I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I came out with my exercise science degree. I thought I was going to be a strength coach, the collegiate level. And then life happened the way life happened. And I got a teaching certification as a backup plan that I ended up having to use, right? So when I got that whole idea of I'm doing what I wound up doing, it just created such a curiosity behind it. Then I got present to the fears, right? Because it still took me 2 years to actually leave after I discovered that. And I think that speaks more to what you're talking about. And it was, again, spending that time recognizing, understanding, digging through, like, what's stopping me from this big move, this bold action, and actually figuring it out and being willing to say, you know what, people are going to say what people are going to say. No one's going to understand, and that's okay. And it started with realizing I was single at the time. And it started with realizing that I hadn't done international travel, for example, because I thought I had to do it with someone, specifically a romantic relationship. And this is just a small example, but it gave me a really big aha moment. Because I realized, like, oh my God, I'm basically been stopping my life and holding my life back from all of these little fears that aren't even currently mine. They were a child. They were a protective mechanism. They were something that thought it was keeping me safe, a part of me. And so the very first thing I did actually was I took a solo trip to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon, and just stayed in an Airbnb by myself, walked all over Portland by myself. I'd actually never even traveled in country by myself. And that was just such a liberating experience to challenge a belief system like that, to just go travel. And it started to open the door. So I guess my answer to you is, are you slowing down, digging in, getting curious enough to find out, like, what is stopping you? What are the rational lies? As you said, I've used that myself. I love it. And what is the reality of that? Is it fact? Is it fiction? Is there actually danger? Is it a fear from a survival standpoint that a child built, that if I do this, I won't survive, that isn't in fact real as an adult? So
you being a public educator, and I will share, my wife is a public educator, and the knowing, talking with her on a daily basis, knowing other teachers, burnout within the public school system is very, very, very common. I'm just curious, which is not really, I guess, in our line of leadership in the podcast, but I'm just curious, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know, from the angle of leaders in a community, what could be done differently from the community side to give better support to the teachers, to help them and to aid them? Is there anything that the community can do to help?
Oh, there's so many layers to that question. First of all, because we also do support educators. We haven't gotten there, and we'll get there later, that, we work with high stress professionals. And in my opinion, those are educators.
Yes.
They're a different version of frontline. And the bigger picture first, right? There's legislative changes that need to happen, because there's so much happening right now that even the leadership who wants to support their teachers are struggling to be able to support their teachers, right? The principals and the APs, I know many of them, many people who where I was working alongside of as a teacher are now APs or are now principals that I've reached out to and talked to and been like, hey, bring me in, let me help you out. And they're like, I have no funding, I have no time. I would love to bring you in and I have no idea how I can do it. And, I'm having, now that we have vouchers happening everywhere, especially in Texas, I'm having to let teachers go. So then teachers are getting piled on with even more, and they're having even more responsibilities. So what can we do? I mean, goodness gracious, like from a legislative standpoint, we need to start supporting our education system, giving them the funds they need to keep the good teachers. Because the good teachers, there's so much happening. They're not being paid enough. And people are going to be like, oh, you have the summers off. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, not enough. That does not balance out, people. But we also need to get them, at the very least, we need to get them some tools, some training to navigate what they're experiencing, because these teachers are basically dealing with compassion fatigue. They're dealing with their own versions of PTSD because they're having to support kids on so many different levels, especially on these emotional levels, when they're not even taught how to take care of themselves in that stressful position, but yet they're still supposed to be everything they need to be for this kid or these kids and their peers, right? So at the very, very least, and I'm going to just plug it, bring in something like we do, right? To help these teachers know how to take care of themselves, because we're not taught how to regulate our nervous systems, how to support ourselves through these emotional tolls, to have a bigger container to take care of ourselves and the people we're interacting with.
So would it be fair and, to tell business owners and leaders in the community that maybe the best thing they could do to help would be to figure out a way to sponsor people like you and I? Yep. And it does, I mean, we're two people. We can't cover the whole United States. I'm just suggesting, could a business, and the next question, I guess, would be naturally, which we can't answer. Not all school districts are the same. Maybe the school district says, no, we don't want that. But right. Maybe that's something that could be done. We could sponsor leadership training, self-care training, classroom management training. That was one of the other things that amazes me is from a leadership standpoint, you go through your career to get your education and to become a teacher, and there's very little that teaches you how to manage a classroom and, to what you said, manage all of the emotions that go with having 25 or 30 different students. I'm not trying to plug anything specific, but at the same time, we offer student disc. And I said, how awesome would it be if every teacher had the ability to be able to understand and read the disc report, but have a disc for their students to understand the personalities that are there before they come in the room.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I will get off of that, but I thought that was a great question, and kind of thinking of the leaders that may be listening. I think the call to action there might be look for ways to give the teachers tools maybe outside, because we know that the funding is not there for these types of programs. And it's only going to help you in the long term as a leader and a business owner in your community, that you're going to turn out if the teachers are happier and teaching, I don't want to say better, but it's a better environment. They are going to teach better, and you're going to turn out better students that you're going to hire in 13 years if they're starting in kindergarten. So
agreed. Well, and I would say I agree with you. That's actually a conversation I had with Cedar Park High School here in Texas. The principal and I were talking about, maybe we need to see if we can't engage the community businesses. But in Texas, most of the community businesses get hit by all the athletic programs.
Yep.
And I'm speaking from a soccer coach. Like, we were one of them. We're out there asking for support and funding to take care of the athletics and the kids. So, there's even that consideration. There's still something to have to navigate, right? Of how much goes to athletics and how much goes to these teachers taking care of the kids. And, balancing that out in some capacity. But I do agree that's one way. And I'm going to go ahead and poke a bear and say, parents, stop expecting your teacher to take all the responsibility for the actions of your children. Because, I mean, goodness gracious, we can't do it all.
Yes, no, there are so many layers to that. And again, I truly believe it all rises and falls on leadership one way or another. And that is back to, we have to stop that from progressing. It has progressively gotten worse over the past 30 years, maybe 40 years. We need to stop that. And how do we stop that? We got to give the correct tools to the people that are educating our students. So kind of coming out of that, you describe yourself as someone that often says yes out of fear of rejection, and you kind of touched on that a little bit. How many people today are suffering from that, that they just say yes because they're afraid if they say no, they might not get that client to pay them. They might not get the new job. They might not get the promotion, whatever the case is. How many people really say yes just out of fear?
Oh, God. Most people. I call it yes syndrome, because it's like, it's not even just, if I don't say yes, I won't get the client. If I don't say yes, I won't get won't get this, that, or the other. It's also that we live in a culture where our value is based on productivity. And so the more we do, the better we are, the more we're seen as being successful, right? And so that yes is not just, oh, I won't get the client or I won't get this. It's also, if I don't, then who am I in the world? How am I viewed by people if I don't have this, that, and the other, and I haven't reached this, that, and there? And so I think it's on a psychological standpoint, it's much bigger than just I may not get the client or I may not get the money. It's who am I if I'm not constantly achieving, succeeding, and producing? And I think that's something that needs to be a more normalized conversation as well, is how do we start dismantling that? Because you're not on this earth to do. You're on this earth to be. And the job that you do is just something you do. And even for a parent, being a parent is something you do. It is not who you are. Being a first responder is not who you are. It is what you do, right? Who you be is how you show up in the world, right? Kind, yep. Compassionate, motivating, inspiring, right? That's who do you want to be in the world? So yeah, I think everybody deals with it. I think it's something we're constantly having to navigate, and at what level?
We're actually, I think I'm going to post it later today or tomorrow morning, just depends on timing. But I was just through a conversation I had the other day, I was thinking about the fact that when you were a teacher, do you have fond memories of that time that you did really good on the standardized test? No.
I got lucky. I was not a core teacher, so.
Well, okay, but my point is, in any job, I don't have fond memories of a great policy that I wrote. That's not something I look back and think like, yes, and so to your point, that productivity, all of the things that we think is what makes us successful, nobody's going to remember. At the end of the day, what people remember is how you showed up.
Yeah.
So what do we do to kind of get past that? How do we stop saying yes just because we're fearful? What's the, if you could tell somebody, here's where you start. This is how you start to get better at it. What's that starting point?
I think the simplest literal action you can do is pause. Before you're going to, and I'm getting real literal here, before you go to say yes or no to anything, pause for at least 5 seconds. And literally on those hands, 1, 2, 3, pause for 5 seconds and ask yourself, do I really want to do this? 1, right? And there may be this version of I have to in there. Question that. What will happen if you do? What will happen if you don't? Do you really have to? The number of times I hear people tell me I have no choice drives me up the damn wall. You always have choice. The problem is choice occurs sometimes as chocolate. Choose, right? Which means you have to choose it or not. And that's still a choice. It's not always chocolate versus vanilla. And so it's, pause long enough to acknowledge, do I want to do it? Can I do it? Should I do it? What's behind doing it? Am I doing it because I think I need to? Am I doing it for recognition? Am I doing it for validation? Am I doing it because it'll make people like me, or I think it will? Like, what's the driving motivator? So the most literal action I can give is pause, a minimum of 5 seconds. And that's actually what I coach a lot of female leaders, because they're so autonomic in their responses. It's just yeah, yep, yes, yeah. And I was that way too. I mean, I was the girls' athletic coordinator. I was the strength and conditioning coordinator for our girls' sports, for our middle school sports. I was the coordinator for our communications team. I did Pop Warner on the weekends. I was a stylist on the side. Like, I was just, yeah. And here's the underlying thing that a lot of people don't realize either. Being a yes person is also symptomatic of, it gives me the excuse to never have to look at my own stuff.
Got it. I'm just thinking through your steps, and I know even myself, I can't tell you the number of times that somebody asks me for something and I say, I will get that to you by this afternoon. And just recently, I've started stopping myself because now I'm a little different. I still have a paper calendar that I carry in my back pocket, but I have everything on my phone as well. And I stop myself and look at my calendar first, because why do I want to tell somebody and create unneeded stress in my life? Because it really doesn't matter if they get it this afternoon or tomorrow morning or tomorrow night. And I can look at my calendar and say, I'm booked solid for the next 3 days. Is Friday okay? And boy, does that change the conversation. So I like your idea of just pausing there. I've never, even though I just kind of started that, I never realized what I was doing there. I'm really just pausing. I have the yes syndrome maybe as well.
Most of us do. I mean, it's so easy to be in a conversation, and we can take it even really simple, right? Like, can you come to my birthday party this weekend? Let's keep it super relational and like social. How many people immediately feel that angst of, I'm supposed to say yes? Like, there's a lot of people who are like, it's easy for me to say no to. But there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't want to say no, but like, can I? And when we give those statement responses instead, where it's like, well, I don't know, that's on a Saturday and it's pretty early, right? Where there's no yes and there's no. And so you're like kind of like pushing the ball back in the other person's court so that they'll do it for you.
I'm laughing because I think I've done that.
Most people have.
I guess at the end of the day, well, I'll ask that question, all right, so we identify it. We have yes syndrome. We start to pause. Does it ever go away? Is there a 12-step program, and when we get to the end of the 12 steps, we don't do it anymore? Or is it something that you just need to recognize because inevitably it's built into us?
I think it can be something that is mostly eradicated, right? I think there will still be certain people in your life or certain situations in your life where you're going to have to like remember to pause and remember to check in, because it's someone you love, it's someone you really care about, or it's a really big project, or right, like the intensity of it, if you will, could be another level, right? We joke, new level, new double. Like, once you get to a point of being comfortable saying yes or no and disappointing people and knowing it doesn't mean anything about you that you did, there could still be that next level thing that you're like, oh God, seriously? So even for me, my example of that is getting to a point where I was really good at saying no again. I started learning how to say no and taking on less and walking away from things. But at one point I was the executive director of a nonprofit for women and girls based in self-defense. And I had 2 years prior, I had told the staff, we're going to take this national, like this, we're going to take it global. Like, this thing's going to blow up. We're going to be all these things, right? I made all these promises, said all of these things. And here I am 2 years later realizing I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, shit. I have to go back and tell these people, hey, never mind. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna back out and walk away, and I'm gonna go do this instead. And it was liberating to realize that was what I wanted to do, was like to acknowledge, oh, I'm miserable because I want to walk away, but I'm staying because I think I have to. It was really liberating. And then it was immediately terrifying because there were people I cared about, right? And there was potential for disappointment and upset and rejection and all the things. And the reality is none of those things happened. They were like, got it. Where do we go from here? And I think that's an important element to add into this conversation, is how often we catastrophize.
Yes.
What's actually going to happen.
I think it was Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week. One of the exercises that he gives in there is about just being uncomfortable. And, he talks about starting your own business, and, most people never do it because they're too scared. They're fearful. They never take the leap. And, he suggests, go out, wear dirty clothes, only take $1.10 with you, and try to survive for a day on the streets with $1.10. And now you face that fear because, in your mind, you're thinking, oh no, I don't have a paycheck anymore. I'm going to end up, poor on the street without a house. I'm going to lose everything. And it's not that way. I mean, there are off ramps. There are ways to turn things around. There are ways that, we can do it. But to your point, what'd you call it? Catastrophize or size it. That's, I think that many people do that. And I think even within businesses, we don't take on projects because we're doing that. Now, some of those things create additional stress. And one of the things I wanted to make sure we touched on is your CARES approach for high stress professionals. Now, you've already identified teachers are definitely high stress professionals. But what is your definition of a high-stress professional? Because I know I've run into tons of people that I'm thinking, boy, they're pretty stressed. And they're like, I have no stress in my life whatsoever. So what's your definition of high stress?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually don't have a definition for it. I feel like it's where you're living, how I'm going to define it right now. You're living beyond what even you expected your body to be capable of. You're pushing through what your body is telling you it's not capable of. It's screaming at you. It's got headaches. You're tired. You're achy. You're not getting enough sleep. Your brain won't shut down. It won't shut off. And yet you're like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. Right? The compassion fatigue, the overwhelm. And it's usually high expectations and high achievers, right? People who expect a lot from themselves because of the impact they desire to make, or the impact they know they're having, whether they mean to or not, like a teacher. First responders, those are the people we work with a lot. And then corporate roles, right? There's just, things never slow down. It's just go, 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 go. It's being in that rat race, being on that wheel. And where there's not a lot of support or, what's the other word I want? Not a lot of support and not a lot of, goodness, what's the word I want? I want to say belief system, but it's not really it's not the word I really want. The people who are leading also realize, also telling you there's no space, there's no room, we can't slow down, we can't back up, we can't pause. So you've been coached up and taught and mentored to survive instead of to lead.
Makes sense. So how does the CARES approach start to alleviate or help some of that? And as you were describing it, what I kind of had in my mind is, I don't know, a ER surgeon, and there's been a catastrophe and they're on their 5th surgery and their body's telling them they can't do it. But yet everybody around them is saying, if you don't do it, this person could die. This is an extreme example, but that's high stress.
Yeah.
And so how does your CARES approach start to alleviate some of that or start to help with that?
Yeah, we're definitely starting, I would say, on the most basic level with our current program. We intend to build out more and more and more, but this is stage 1, right? Stage 1 is self-mastery, self-leadership, right? So we can't get in and really be talking about leadership until we've turned in and looked at, do I even know how to lead, manage, navigate myself? Before I can even consider outward communication, outward leadership, outward impact, I've got to understand what's going on with me. So CARES stands for communication, awareness, resilience, emotional literacy, and self-mastery. And we're really starting with that awareness and presence piece of what is your body telling you? What emotions are you experiencing that you're ignoring? What is the impact that that's having? Right? What are your autonomic responses what does trigger you right into that moment, right? When you realize that anytime your teammate comes to you and has to talk to you about God knows what, like it's just an immediate reaction. Like you're sent into a certain space immediately, but are you actually present that that's happening so that you can, again, navigate and manage how that's happening for you, so then you can navigate and manage the outcome that's expected. And that other piece of that, right, is where we need to get into the communication. So understanding how your own body is communicating with you. And then now how do I outwardly start expressing, I'm not okay, man. Like I need a break. I need to step away for a second. I realize this isn't how we do things, but I'm not okay. Like we're killing each other. Like we got to start normalizing the conversation of I need to slow down. I need to back up. It's got to be okay.
So one of my favorite things that I hear over and over, and somebody's starting a new business, and the advice they get is, when you start a new business, there are going to be times you just got to work 100 hours a week and you got to get it done and you got to do these things because you can't succeed. Or another kind of version of that is I've talked to people that are saying, I see success, but I also see that it has a terrible toll. Like you got to trade off a lot of things to be successful. Mm-hmm. One, is that true? Is it okay for anybody to be working 100 hours a week for any given reason? And how do we get ourselves out of that to have that recognition that it's okay to say, and there's the opposite side. I've run into a few people that say, well, I can't work over 7 hours a day because I'm not productive after the 7th hour. Well, that's just ridiculous. It might be semi-true, but that's going a little bit too far. But how do we get ourselves out of that and find a happy medium where we can still be successful?
Well, I think it comes back to what you said earlier, that people just get in and they're like, I have to stay here for the paycheck. Certainty and stability drive so many people. And they drive so many people to a point that they will never actually be able to choose uncertainty and joy. Like they're so wrapped tight by it. Like the idea of uncertainty, of not knowing what's going to happen. I don't know that they'll ever get out because that is so gripping for most people. And for me, it became I look for it. I like to remind myself, when you consider a miracle can only occur in uncertainty by definition. Otherwise, it's not a freaking miracle.
Yep.
But so many people are completely and utterly terrified of an uncertain space, even though uncertainty is literally the only thing that actually exists. Like everywhere that we think certainty exists is BS, a belief system. This job that you think is giving you stability and certainty could be gone at any moment. Your life could be gone at any moment. Your relationship, your health, any of these things can be gone at any moment. But we've convinced ourselves in this certainty bubble that it's literally wearing us down and killing many people because they can't see outside of it.
Yeah, I think one of the, it's very sad to watch somebody that stays in a job for 35 years to get to the retirement because they think that's the goal. And then they retire and they go home and sit in their recliner and die a few months later or what have you. And, there has to be more to it than that, obviously. But kind of thinking of that and thinking of the CARES approach, which we're talking about ourselves, I mean, in that initial stage. You said emotional resilience, self-mastery being two of those other pieces. And when I think of those two, I have a book somewhere here. It's like the Plant Manager's Executive Handbook from 1950. Mm-hmm. And I've looked through it for fun a few times, and I'm pretty sure that emotional resilience and self-mastery are not mentioned in 1952. Why or have these items come forward now? And I believe, and I think you do as well, these are becoming critical skills that are, if we want to be good managers and leaders, we have to learn. But what's changed? Why can't I, as a business leader, say, I give them a paycheck, what else do they need? And how do we encourage, from a leadership standpoint, how do we encourage everybody around us, our workforce, our team? How do we encourage them to start to deploy CARES or that approach? How do you start to manage that?
Yeah, so every generation brings its own. It's like the generation below, the one that's coming up, is always bringing like what they didn't get from the one before. Like the baby boomers were the, workforce is a number. You're just a number. I don't care what you do, how you do it, just get it done and I give you a paycheck. And they tried, pushing that down, but then also they wanted to make enough money for, those of us underneath that. So like not have to live like that. And I think it's interesting watching Gen Z and millennials come into the workforce with Gen X and with baby boomers who are like, clashing, because millennials, especially the younger age millennials and the Gen Zers are like, no, screw that. I'll take less money to be happy. I don't care. I'll live lighter. I'll live leaner, and I'll take less money if it means I get to do something where I know I'm having an impact, where I know that values are driving the company. Versus over here, where a baby boomer was like, I just need to make sure I have enough money because, they lived through all kinds of things, that they're like, I need to make sure I have enough money to take care of my people, period. And I will do whatever it takes. And that trickled into, Gen X, but it was already starting to break apart because we're like, this is exhausting. Like, what are you doing? But it's also what they were sold, it was what they were sold at that point in time. You go to school, you go to college, you go to work, you become a blue collar worker, or you become a business owner. And you can even see it. More people are becoming entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business owners. Less people are wanting to go just in the workforce. Trades are back. You can see the pendulum swinging because people are miserable. They don't want to just do it to do it anymore. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for passion. They're looking for impact. And that's what's driving these younger generations that the older generations are not realizing. It's like they just think they're lazy and don't want to work and just, are insubordinate. And I'm like, no, they're driven completely differently. You can't just throw money at them. Most of them are not driven by how much money my father is an example. He runs a business, and he had an employee that wasn't doing great or whatever, and he kept trying to incentivize her with bonuses. And I was finally like, Dad, she does not care. She does not care. She is here because she knows the impact she's making on the members. You've got to incentivize her differently. You've got to get outside the box here. So to your point about how do they start to manage it and navigate it, you brought up DISC for students. I know there's 18 million different ways to understand your people, but number one, does your company actually have values? But more importantly, are you actually living by them as a company? I know plenty of companies that have values smacked on a wall that if you asked any employee, they would say, BS, none of that happens.
Yep.
That's when those younger generations and even my generation are going to run because they're like, this isn't worth it. It's not worth it.
In mentioning that, I think it's a good segue into the fact that you integrate neuroscience and behavioral science into what you do. Mm-hmm. And I can already hear, some leader out there saying, oh, great, now I got to become a psychiatrist to be able to manage, right? And I don't think that's what you're saying. But I guess my question really is, how can understanding the brain help to improve our leadership decision-making processes and our businesses? How, what's that connection? Because even myself, sometimes I can start to look at some things and say, do I really need to understand how my brain processes this? So just explain to me a little bit how you integrate those and how you think that will help make better leaders and better decisions out of leaders.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the leaders that you might be talking about see, we'll call it soft skills and awareness as soft, right? As like, just grow up, pull up your bootstraps and let's go, right? But it's not soft, it's strategic. Understanding soft skills and being able to communicate and being able to navigate what's happening with someone in that moment creates more opportunity for choice, creates more opportunity for effectiveness, creates more opportunity for efficiency. So let's go back to the way that most of them think. They think, the result I need, like there's a number, right? I run my metrics, I run my KPIs, like I know those things. But what they're forgetting is that there's a person behind that number that's running that result. And what's behind that person, right? What's behind that person is a behavior, is an action that's moving towards that result. But what's behind that behavior and what's behind that action is an emotion and a thought process. Said another way, their focus. So if I want to speak their language, if I want to impact the bottom line, if I want to impact results, if I want to impact KPI, I've got a backwards map and I've got to go understand how are they thinking? What are they focusing on? Meaning, what are their thoughts? What are their emotions? And therefore, what actions is it creating? Because once I can backwards map and get into that space, and I'm not saying you have to be a psychologist, like you said, then I'm going to have better KPI. I'm going to have better results. I'm going to have better return. It's going to be more efficient, more effective with less turnover. And the best part about it is I'm not saying that you should come in and you need to pick their brains apart. I'm saying for someone like our company, we want to come in and we want self-leadership. We want them to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, how it's impacting their actions and behaviors, so that then everybody's dealing with something a little easier to navigate. We don't want to add more to anybody's plate. We're trying to make it easier for everybody, more efficient for everybody, more joy-filled for everybody.
So if I've put this together right in my mind, to kind of reiterate what I'm seeing is we as a company go through a strategic planning and we come up with a new strategic plan. And typically you do one of two things. You put it on the shelf and never look at it again, which is probably a waste of time. Or, you then create out of that strategic plan your KPIs that you want to look at, or your measurables that you're going to measure. And we're going to assume that we've done the strategic planning well, and we have we have actual goals that are, we're going to increase by X by, this certain date. And so we have those pieces. And then the next step would be that we then create each one of the individual goals out of that might be for individual departments and those types of things. But what I'm hearing or thinking is that now we have an additional tool that we can go beyond that, and we can start to look at as leadership, what behaviors do we want out of these people, these departments, and then start working on how you change those behaviors, emotions, and then ultimately you're going to end at your end goal, but you're going to do it and have happier people rather than having somebody stand there with a whip whipping the employees saying, we need to change this. We need to change this. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think you said it beautifully.
So, excuse me, throughout your time and looking at some of your writing before the podcast, I think you have a unique ability of transforming complexity into clarity. And how do you approach, and I guess probably the better question is, what are a couple of pointers you would give to folks when they're in an overwhelming, complex situation that can help them to gain a little bit of clarity?
I'm going to go back to the pause because it's just really effective. And when we're talking about all this, we've talked about how often people are just moving so fast and so in such an automatic way without actually recognizing what's happening. And then that's what we do, right? The brain wants to be effective. So the brain is figuring out, what can I delete? What can I distort? What can I generalize? What can I get rid of to make things faster and simpler? So it puts things in patterns, right? It makes things, it associates things together, even if those things don't belong together, to make it easier. And so when I say pausing, we're getting an opportunity to, one, break the pattern, and two, get aware of the pattern so that we can start taking new actions, right? And have, therefore, new results. And so it's the 3 Ps. It's pause, pull back, physical scan. And that's from the Condor approach, our friends Todd and Cole Whitty, who I absolutely adore. And the pause is, like we said, right? Like, stop, interrupt the pattern however you need to. And I can give some examples in a minute. And then pull back. Now, let's say that, you're in a conversation with somebody, or you're about to have to make a decision, right? Pull back. Let's say that might be, I can say I've done this. I've just written this really long email to a parent as a teacher, right? And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk to the bathroom first, get a drink of water, and then come back. And I'm going to reread this and realize, you know what? If it takes me longer than a minute to read it, it's too long to send, just for an example, right? So pull back could be if you and I are in a conversation that gets a little out of hand, in a sense of we're both riled up enough to where we're not going to be able to meet the result we're desiring. Maybe I need to walk away for a minute. Maybe I need 5 minutes to breathe for a second, go outside. Or like I just said, I need to walk away from my computer for a moment, or whatever it is. And I'm going to tell people who are listening, if a first responder can take 90 seconds before they walk into a call, you can take 90 seconds to stand up at your desk or walk outside or pause. So pull back, right? Meaning either literally step away or just kind of stop and take a breath from what you're doing. And then the physical scan is to get aware of what we just brought up. It's to get aware of the emotion, to get aware of the thought, the primary thought, and to get aware of the bodily sensations. So what emotion am I feeling right now? Because a lot of us have no idea, or we actually tend to label them incorrectly, because most people think we have happy, sad, mad, frustrated, right? And that's about it. When really there are 85 emotions, probably more. And what emotion am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body, and how? Am I getting a tight throat? Is my heart starting to beat quickly? Am I starting to get sweaty? Are my shoulders tightening up? Am I getting a headache, right? And then what's the dominant thought? There's probably a lot of thoughts, but what's that dominant thought that's really running what's happening in this moment? So it really does come back to awareness. And I'm going to beat this like a dead horse, because we can't do anything until we slow down long enough to acknowledge, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What emotion am I dealing with? I can't change anything. I can't change perception. Therefore, I can't change the model of my world. I can't change my results. I can't impact anything until I have a clue what's happening over here.
Makes sense. I'm just thinking through in general, the number of times that, I think slowing down is probably the biggest thing in the world, even for myself. I think slowing down and just taking a little bit of time to think, do I need to do this right now? Can I come back to it? Is very valuable. Well, Jen, as we're getting ready to come to a close, I don't want to miss the opportunity to let people know, where can they find out more about you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to engage with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so the Academy, sorry, MotiveAction.Academy is our website. Not .com, not .org, MotiveAction.Academy. And that's just easiest because everything's there. In the footer and throughout our different pages, you can find a way to schedule a call. You can find our email, you can find our phone number, you can find all our social medias, our YouTube channel. You can find literally everything there. So that's just the easiest answer is MotiveAction.Academy.
MotiveAction, the correct way. Just don't try to do it the way I said it at the beginning, right? I'm not sure what I said there. Well, Jen, we've had a lot of fun so far, but we always end every episode with 3 kind of rapid fire questions. The first one, and we ask all of our guests the same 3 questions. The first one, I'm really excited because it is very relevant to you specifically. But really the question is derived from so many conversations I've had over the years where somebody says, the graduates coming out of high school that we're hiring can't do this, or when we were in school, we learned how to interact, or we learned this. And I thought, what a great opportunity. We have leadership experts from around the world. The question is, if we could magically get all of the school administrators from across the world in one room, and you had an opportunity to give them one piece of advice of something that could be added or put into the career of a student that would help turn out a better, well-rounded, ready for society student, what would that one thing be? And I can already tell that you have about 75 of them.
My God, I do. I'm going to go with the one, I'm going to go with communication, because I don't know about you, but we were not taught to communicate in school. We weren't actually taught inter and intrapersonal communication skills the way we actually need them in reality, right? And so I'm going to go with communication, because to me, being able to initiate and navigate vulnerable, courageous conversations, you will have a byproduct of resiliency. You will have a byproduct of relationship that does not exist right now in these current kids. Because communication is the basis for everything. If we cannot communicate, we cannot relate. And if we cannot relate, we start to feel helpless, we start to feel hopeless, we start to feel alone.
I would agree 100%, but I'm a little biased because my specialty is communication. So,
mine too.
The second question is, what throughout your career has been your go-to book that you've continually went back to that has given you good insight?
Oh, I'm like, they're all right next to me. Oh, goodness. Which one have I reread? Ooh, I have so many books. Honestly, I don't necessarily have one that I just go back to over and over again, because I have little bits from so many. So instead, can I tell you my current favorite?
Sure.
I'm currently reading Already Free by Bruce Tift.
Yes.
And he's blending Buddhism practices with psychotherapy, Western psychotherapy, and it's really fascinating, especially if you love communication.
Awesome. And the last question is, in today's world with all the software, the gadgets, the technology that's out there, what's your favorite piece of technology that you find useful today?
ChatGPT. I hate even saying that out loud, but yeah, ChatGPT has saved my life quite a few times as a 2-person partnership right now in our business. My business partner and I wear many, many hats, and many of them we separate for each other. She has these, I have those. And there are many things that I never would have known how to do had it not been for ChatGPT. So
awesome. Well, Jen, it's been a pleasure having you on today. I've had a lot of fun in the conversation. I hope maybe we can get you on again in the future. And I think we could probably talk for another hour or so and dive deeper. But thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it so much. I absolutely agree.
And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out some of our past episodes, and don't forget to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on so that you get alerts when the new episodes come out each week. Until next time, we appreciate you.